Well, good afternoon, everyone. Friday afternoon before the long weekend in Sydney. Darren Saul here, your host of Playing with Perspective, the suspended animation podcast, episode 160. And I have my good friend and psychotherapist, Adrian Hanks, back with here in the show. How are you, Adrian?
I'm really good, mate. It's been a while since I've been on one of your shows, and I'm
It has
really looking
been.
forward to having a conversation today.
Absolutely. And really looking forward to this episode because Adrian is here to chat about his new charity organization, the Blue Wren Foundation, which helps people to pay attention, understand, and stop family and relationship conflict. So, for everybody out there who might have missed him earlier on in the show, Adrian is an inspirational author, coach, psychotherapist, and speaker. He is also the director of the Blue Wren Foundation, his charity organization. He shares holistic health and well-being insights, wisdom, and solutions through his writing, and with 20 years' experience as a counselor and psychotherapist, leading edge master coach, facilitator, and a trainer. So welcome, my man.
Thanks, Dad. Yeah, the Blue Wren is quite a story, so I'm sure we can dive straight into
Absolutely. So let's dive in. So
story.
tell me a bit about how this came about. What is it? What's it for? Etc.
Yeah,
Etc.
yeah, totally. So the Blue Wren's 5.5 years old. In October, we actually celebrate our 6 years, and we're
Right.
looking at having some big celebration in October around that.
Fantastic.
And so at the beginning, it was all gung ho and getting everything organized, and I was fully on fire with it all, which was amazing. And then, last couple of years with, personal stuff and then COVID and blah, blah, it's been a little bit quiet, but just in the last 3 months, we've reactivated, and the Blue Wren is now back on the wing. We're
Right.
flying again. To put a bit of a metaphor in there. And it's really feeling like it's a perfect time to get going with that. So how it started, Darren, just to give some
Yeah,
context
please.
to where we started, was about 6 years ago. Rosie Batty was the Australian of the Year, and she wrote a book called Mother Story, about a very sad story about losing her child who was killed by her ex-partner
Oh,
in
God.
Victoria. And she started to speak out about family and domestic violence, and she wrote this amazingly moving and emotional book. And I went to a book launch in Brisbane, and I had a few minutes with Rosie and had a conversation with her. And I went back home, I read the books over a few days, and then I went to give the book to my wife Sunday night, remember, crystal clear.
Wow.
And I gave her the book and I said, I really feel like I want to do a little bit more around this space. I've been running men's groups and men's work now for over 20 years. And I feel like there's another level to the work in terms of really having a look at conflict in relationship. I was already doing relationship counseling with couples and doing my men's work, but I felt there was something missing to deliver.
Right. So like it needed to go even deeper.
Needed to go deeper in terms of men's relationship education was what
Yep.
was really about really going in and looking at our actions, behaviors, thoughts in and around relationships,
Yep.
and where as men and women too, of course, but my focus is the men, of where we step over what I call the line in the sand
Mhm.
in relationship. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's not so subtle. And as your man yourself, sometimes we lose it. That's just part of life. But if we can learn to educate ourselves a bit more in that space about learning not to get triggered, not to step over that line. So that was my idea. And then what happened, Darren, was Arlene said to me, well, why don't you just go ahead and get on with it, basically, and stop talking about it.
Nice.
So I did. And about a few days later, I was talking to a friend of mine, David, and he was in Bellingen, down near Coffs Harbour there. He was on Skype, he had his computer, he was sitting in the paddock, and he said, wow, he said, I'm being surrounded by blue wrens at the moment.
Oh.
And I said, wow. I said, that's interesting. He said, let me tell you a story about the blue wren. He said, what happens is the dominant alpha male in the flock will stand up to any bird that tries to attack the flock, even like a big crow or something like that. And I suddenly thought of the image of that and the work I wanted to do. And I said, David, you've
Wow.
just given me the name for my foundation. It's
Brilliant.
iconically Australian. It's got some meaning. It's a bit of I feel like a totem. And I see blue wrens everywhere. It's quite incredible. So it's become a bit of a totem, bit of a story.
Yep.
And that's how it started, Darren, 5.5 years ago. And I went off and put a call out for facilitators, and 6 men turned up, and we did a 3-day training of how to facilitate the process. I got an advisory board, got the charity set up as a not-for-profit. So it's been quite a journey. And I think the biggest challenge for me, Darren, is while I'm delivering this and asking other men to come and do changes, is looking at my own behavior and my own patterns and my own foibles and my own challenges.
Yep.
And that gets in the way sometimes because I sometimes don't quite feel in alignment or authentic with that. Yep. So it's quite a challenging position to be in.
But I suppose the fact that you have recognized that and you have the self-awareness to see that in yourself is exactly why you are the person that is championing this great charity.
It probably is.
It's your journey. It's all our journey, and
Yeah,
it's a really good point because, like, men are not traditionally in tune with their emotions and in tune and as aware as females are.
Yeah.
So we have trouble in this area.
Yeah, we do, and it's really common for men to drop into what we call that emotional intelligence, and really look at how they're truly feeling or thinking in that space.
Yep.
And particularly when you take it into the relationship space, it's easy sometimes to work when we're single, alone, but when we're with somebody else, particularly for 24/7, and we get our buttons pushed, and that's where triggers can happen, and we say things and do things we don't really mean to do.
Yep.
But 90% of the time, it's quite unconscious.
Yeah, definitely.
So what we try to do in our programs is we bring that consciousness out so that men can start to think more deeply about their thoughts, their beliefs, their actions. And a lot of it's just because we've been programmed through society to do certain things in certain ways.
Yeah.
And that's
would you say some of it's evolutional as well? Like some of these triggers are evolutionary?
Totally, they are, yeah. But what's happening, particularly in the last probably 5 to 10 years, is the new way of being is slowly changing because people are starting to say that's not okay anymore. What was okay, seemingly, even a decade ago, it's not okay anymore. It's not okay to yell and swear at people. It's not okay to get drunk and abuse. It's not okay. Yep. And that was it was sort of normalized. And to some degree, Darren, it's still normal in a lot of relationships.
Wow.
And what we're calling out is it's actually not okay.
No.
And how do we as men attend to that? Rather than blaming and shaming men, how do we have compassion and empathy and support to take the men through the journey? Because as we know, if you keep pointing the finger and blaming and shaming, men just run back to the cave.
That's right. That's right.
They go deeper into the cave. I'm not coming out because I don't want to be shamed. I don't want to be blamed. I don't want to be labeled as a perpetrator, all that stuff. Yep. So what we're doing in the Blue Wren Foundation that's very different than other men's programs around relationship education and conflict and domestic violence is we're starting right at the beginning end of doing the prevention work.
Yep. Perfect.
So we're saying, we're not a perpetrator program where men come because they've perpetrated. We're trying to change the language and the paradigm around that and say to men, come and do some work.
Yep.
Go inside, have a look. In a safe environment, a professional environment, and just open the lid and have a look inside to see where maybe there's some changes that you can bring into your life and your relationship.
Beautiful.
And if you do that, and you can just stall it and stop the potential of flipping out and doing something you're not going to be proud of, you probably then going to get shamed and feel guilty. But I know, and we know from the programs we've run, when men get that understanding, just before they go to do something or think something or say something, that moment of choice is there for them. And it's a really nice place to be because it's like, I've got this under control.
Yep, nice. Because they recognize it's a choice before they never would have recognized it.
Totally, yeah. So, and what we say, it can be very subtle. It might be just a program that's just been there for 10 or 20 years, and you just keep doing it because come home from work, put your feet up, get grumpy, get moody, because it's become a habit.
Yeah.
So it's all about breaking the negative and habits that basically no longer serve.
Yep. So really, it's really a program or a foundation for all men, because as men, we all should be trying to better ourselves.
That's it.
Part of life is just growth.
That's it.
We can all develop ourselves because we take it right back to the beginning.
Yeah, it is. And look, I say, it's really for all of us, men, women, we can all do a change. Because we're focused on the men, because that's the work I do and I've been doing for over a couple of decades. I really want to get to that place where I'll tell you a little story of an ideal for me is,
Sure.
and I love this story, is, I've got two daughters, and what I'd like to think is my daughters or any young woman goes on a date, and they meet, it could be a blind date, and they meet the guy for the first time, and they say to him, "So tell me something about yourself, but before you do that, I have a question for you. Have you been to do the Blue Wren line in the sun program? Because if you have, I know you've done some work on yourself.
Love it.
So that's I'd love for that to be everywhere. That people go, hey, here's my Blue Wren
certificate.
Here's my certificate, and I've done the program, and it means I'm a little bit more aware than I was previously, because now I've actually done a program to give, and the girl or the woman will say, "Oh, that's great, because I feel a bit safer knowing that you've actually attended to some of your thoughts and behaviors and attitudes."
I love it. Absolutely brilliant. And so I'd love to know a bit more about the program itself. How does it work? How do you, facilitate all this?
Yeah. So we've, in the programs, we do a 2-day weekend program,
right,
for the men. We have 24 men max in the room,
gotcha,
3 or 4 facilitators. And how we begin it, we create the safe space, obviously, with what's in the room stays in the room and all the rest of it, and get clear on that. And then we delve into 110 questions over 2 days.
Wow.
That the men read, evaluate, take notes, and it's everything from subtle beliefs, behaviors, thoughts, to the not so subtle. We go from everything from just being moody, maybe having a couple too many beers, right to the pointy end of, do you push your woman, So we do the whole spectrum. And the unique thing, Darren, that we offer is we don't tell the men what we believe they need to change. They work it out for themselves from the self-evaluation over 2 days.
Perfect.
And then after the 2 days, they then get to make a pledge of what they're going to go away and work on. And I say, for some people, it's subtle because, they might be really great in their relationship and they don't have many issues.
Or they might just say, I need to express myself more or whatever.
Yeah, totally. It could be, I just need to, date my partner a little bit more and take her out and get more romantic. Might need to make love to my woman a bit more. So it's not always negative behavior that needs changing. Sometimes it's just upping the ante and doing a little bit more, like more dating, more love making, more intimacy, showing one's emotions. So it's a really positive experience because the men get to ascertain what they need to change themselves. They make that positive choice. It gets witnessed by the men. But what we do in the 2 days, Darren, too, is we actually explore some of those not so positive behaviors and attitudes and thoughts.
Nice.
And we do some experiential work around that. We talk about that, we share it, we do a bit of role playing. And the men get to see from different perspectives of how that may impact or does impact on the relationship.
Wow.
And it's really, some men really have wow moments. Sometimes, we get lots of tears, we get lots of laughter, we get all the emotions out there. And it's a beautiful space. I will say that when men step into a safe circle, they just let go and they share generally. Because they feel held. Once we get through the ego stuff and the shame stuff and the guilt and all that, basic beginning stuff, and we create that container, it's amazing what men will share.
Wow, fascinating.
It's quite unique, It's,
absolutely, because you just don't think of that. Men are just not that way inclined, but it's fantastic to hear that.
But given the chance they are, and I think this is the new paradigm that we're stepping into, because the old belief is that men are not emotional, yet we're very emotional beings, as you know.
True, absolutely, we are. We just don't show it. We don't want to show it.
And the reason we don't show it is because of the fear of showing it, because it was not manly, and you couldn't let the guard down. It was girly, and all that language that many of us had with our fathers and our grandfathers and uncles, and you didn't cry because it was girly and it was weak and all those things. And as we've learned and as we share now, vulnerability is one of the most powerful places we can go.
Absolutely.
If we can be vulnerable as a male, that is incredible place. And when we are, our female partners then say, wow, what an incredible human man you are, because you're being vulnerable and you're opening yourself up to me, because that takes courage.
Absolutely. And and that's where the relationship is strengthened. I mean, you cannot, you build relationships and trust through vulnerability, through those
Absolutely.
gaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what happens in the programs. The men create that trust with each other
Yeah.
by being a bit vulnerable. It's vulnerable they like. We don't force the men. We challenge, but we don't force.
Okay.
But it's incredible what, particularly after day one when they get to know each other and
Nice.
been a few handshakes or even hugs, dare I say it, it happens.
A few man hugs.
Yeah. And just to share a story on that, because I think storytelling
Please.
podcast is a beautiful thing to do,
Definitely.
is we ran a program a few years ago in Brisbane, and one man come on, and I won't identify, but he was flying airplanes in position, and he'd worked with a friend for about 30 years, every morning on the tarmac, in the plane, up and down. And after 2 days in the line of the sand of learning to hug, another man and get close, I called him about a few days afterwards, because we do follow-up program after the 2 days. We do 7 follow-up calls to.
Good. I was actually going to ask you about that, so I'm glad you mentioned that.
And I'll share a bit more about that. But this one guy, he got on the tarmac on Monday morning after being a weekend away with us, and he was all hyped up from the weekend. And as he walked towards his friend, 30-year co-pilot, he opened his arms like that and smiled at him like a little bit tentatively, as if to say, hey, this is the hug moment. And his friend walked up to him and hugged him. He said, I've been waiting for you to do that for 30 years.
My God.
And just, I even feel it now.
I feel I got goosebumps just listening.
Yeah, me too, just telling the story again.
Incredible.
And the power of that for those two men, because suddenly they had something deeper than they've ever had before. They were vulnerable together.
Yep.
But 30 years, can you imagine?
30 years. He was his co-pilot for 30 years.
And never hugged.
And never showed much emotion. Isn't that amazing?
It was just like, I didn't really share much. And now they're, sharing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because they let down that guard with each other.
Yep.
But it took one of them the courage to go and be vulnerable, and the chance of being rejected. That's a big one for us men. It's rejection, generally.
Yeah.
So
I suppose
that's
I'm thinking like offhand. That's I suppose why people in teams in the armed forces or in sports or are always so much more connected, because they go through all this together.
Yeah,
whereas
absolutely.
in work life and in friendship, sometimes we don't always get tested to that degree. So we don't have the chance to form those kind of bonds.
Yeah. And in the line in the sand programs we run, that some of those bonds that the men, they find with one or two or more in the group is quite unique. We actually have a bit of a buddy system we set up as well for the men to continue afterwards. And then what we do in terms of that follow-up is we give the men a call a week after, and then a couple of weeks after, and then we slowly let that time lapse go a little bit longer, and we just keep tabs with them. We do the check-ins and make sure they're going okay. So that's good, because we don't just do 2 days and drop them.
No.
So
and how have you found the results, over time so far?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. I was talking to a psychologist friend of mine, and he says measuring prevention results is not easy. But what the men do is say, I know if I hadn't have done the program, my behavior would be different. Gotcha. Because I learned so much. And my partner reflects back to me and says to me, you're a little bit different, or you're a lot different from the workshop.
Nice.
You might be less grumpy, or you're drinking less, or you're less argumentative, or whatever it is, or there's more intimacy. Yep. Depending on what it is. So we talk to men about, driving and ego and communication skills of, what sort of communicator are you? Are you a speaker, a listener?
Yep.
Do you have empathy? What's that? That's
That's right.
yeah. So it's and what we've got, Darren, just to share on that, in September, we're doing our first leadership program.
Oh, great.
So we're getting community and business leaders, males, into the room, 24 men, so that they can learn, one, for themselves, but also to take that message back to the community, back to their organizations and workplaces, to share the stories.
Nice.
To let other men know that it is safe and they were vulnerable themselves. Because if the leaders do it, oftentimes people will follow. And what we've recognized is we need to get those advocates, we need to get those ambassadors and leaders in the community. So we've got a program in September, 2 days on the Gold Coast. Which would be just incredible to get in a room full of male community and business leaders.
Wow.
So put in the call out here for any men
absolutely. There you
feel
go.
like they're a community or business leaders in whatever capacity, and they feel the call to come and do some inner work, but also to take that message back to support other men. I think that's a wonderful thing. So, so we're all ready to go. We're promoting that at the moment. It's all on the website and etc. So, so I do want to put that call out, if I may, for men here as well.
Absolutely.
So if you're a leader and you want to take your leadership to another level, this could just be that.
Absolutely. Have you had much exposure or work to the corporate scene at all?
Just starting in that space now. Another part of my business with Tommy is the Corporate Alchemist Project. Right. So we're sort of working in that corporate space as well. Nice. So we're looking at leaders in business, looking at politicians, looking at some of the service providers, even hopefully the police and a few others, so they can come and really get a sense of what it's like for a man to come and do a program for themselves. Because in that space around relationship and conflict and domestic violence, oftentimes there's a lot of men in those programs asking other men to go and look at themselves and to change. Mm-hmm. And if they haven't done it themselves, there's a bit of an edge to that. So that's like all the facilitators we have, before they do the facilitation, they have to sit in and do a program twice, because they have to do the self-evaluation. Because I don't want men sitting in the chair telling other men to change when they haven't done it themselves.
Haven't done any work
themselves. A little bit hypocritical for me.
Definitely.
So we're really clear that, if you're in that space, find the courage and the vulnerability to go and do some personal work first on yourself. And then you can truly sit authentically with another man and say, hey, look, I 100% support you doing a program of change because I've done it too. And that there's something really beautiful about that exchange.
Definitely. And like that kind of work is unlimited. It never ends. It's infinite. So it's a journey forever. So you're both helping each other.
Yeah. It doesn't stop. I've been in this game for nearly 3 decades now, and it's just like an onion. You just go in and in and in and in, and it's like, hey, where's the end of the onion? But seemingly there's an eternal onion there. That's what I feel.
And just out of interest, just a quick one: all your facilitators men, or do you have some female facilitators as well?
No, we're an all-male facilitator. Okay. We've had women on the advisory board, and we currently have a new advisory board. We've got a treasurer who's a female. We've had a couple of women coming in to speak at some of their programs, just to let men know about, what it's like to be on the other side of.
Because that perspective would be interesting.
Yeah, but a lot of the behavioral change programs for men, they do the male-female. We've chosen not to go down that road for a few different reasons. What we find is when there's a female in the room, men's behavior changes.
Yeah, true.
So the men won't fully express, for instance, rage. If there's a need, if we need to put men in what we call the rage cage and get some of that rage out, they will hold back because there's a female in the room. So we would rather go 100% into the emotion by taking a risk of not having women in the room, females in the room, and just keeping it male. Sometimes there's a place for male and female facilitation, and I'm also a great believer in there's the men's space and the female space, like men's business.
And so I suppose choose where that needs to happen and where it doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What we also offer in the through the Blue Wren Foundation, because 3 of our facilitators are actually counselors and psychotherapists as well. So we offer couples counseling and couples coaching for men and women that want to come and do that work together. So a man might do the program and go, wow, it'd be a really good idea for my partner to be involved with me here. And then we can offer that coaching and counseling as well.
Fantastic.
So outside of the program. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
That's amazing. I mean, I love it. And are there many programs around similar or?
Look, there's men's groups, obviously, but they're generally not focused on just men's relationship education. Then there are the behavior change programs that are often for men that get mandated to go to those programs. There's a few volunteer ones, but they're generally more about the pointy end of men who've been in the domestic violence space. Right. They've broken their AVOs or their DVOs. Oh boy. And they might have been incarcerated, been to court. So there's quite a number of those programs in Australia. Right. Quite a waiting list for some men to, if they've been incarcerated and come out and get put into a program, they can wait months sometimes. Wow. So what happened, Darren, just to put it in context as well a little bit, about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a report in Queensland called the Not Now, Not Ever report.
Right.
There was a task force by Quentin Bryce, who was the Attorney General, I think, or something in Queensland at the time. And they put this big, thick document of 12 months of study and research around change in that conflict, family, domestic violence space. And they gave about 140 recommendations of what the government and organizations need to do to improve that space, to give more support for women, more support for men. So we've taken 40 of those recommendations and we use those recommendations in the organization. Yeah, and a lot of it, what they keep pointing back to continually is prevention, prevention, prevention.
Prevention. Yep.
And that's our key thing is, some men will say, I don't need the program because I'm not violent or aggressive. And I say, it's more than that. It's actually about you looking inside to prevent possibility of that.
Yep.
Because if you've never been divorced, if you've never been cheated upon, if you've never been, thoroughly drunk and suddenly you get drunk, they're the triggers that often can escalate into a conflict. So if we can learn what those triggers are, what those moments are, and avoid them,
definitely,
it's all about the avoidance of a potential.
Yep,
it's
definitely.
Yeah.
And during this kind of work, this will spill into all aspects of people's lives. They'll be better at work. They'll be better with friends. They'll be better with the children. They'll be better with everybody.
Totally, yeah.
They've done the work on themselves just to understand themselves better.
Yeah, and the beauty is they've decided it for themselves.
Yep.
It's not a program where we say, you're a bad man, or we don't label. We try to come from a as much as sometimes judgment comes up, obviously because we're human, but we do say in our programs we are non-judgmental. We try not to judge, and also all men are welcome. In the space, and men can divulge and share what they want to. The only criteria we put on that is if we feel or know that they're harming themselves or another, we have a duty of care to share that, maybe even legally. That's the only caveat we carry on that. But apart from that, men are very welcome to share in the supportive space what they're willing to. And what we find with a lot of men who come, they not only tell the story of where they've stepped over the line themselves, but sometimes where people have stepped over the line towards them as well. And of course that comes up, and then that's a whole nother ball game. And we offer the support and counselling around that as well.
Outstanding.
Yeah. So it's
well done. Well, I mean, I wish you the best of luck. I think it's a fantastic organization, and I wish it goes from strength to strength.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. Look, we've got the foundation. We've got 6 years under our sleeve and under our belt, and we've got some good people supporting us now, and we're looking at different partnerships and funding processes and sponsorships and donations and all those things to really get us moving. We'd love to become a household name. That's our vision in Australia. So that when those young women go on that date, they can ask that question.
There's my
have you done the Blue Wren program? And they go, yeah. And they go, right, the date's good. I'm away with you.
I say, Mum, Dad, I'm going out with this person. He's done the program. Okay, good. You're good.
Yeah. And what it's almost like you've done your L plates and your P plates,
exactly.
And now you've passed your test and you're
That's
away.
Right.
Not that it ever stops, but at least you're off the L plates and on your P plates.
Definitely, and at least you're thinking in the right direction. You're thinking the right way. Yep.
Absolutely. So.
Awesome. And so, Adrian, how can people find out more about this whole organization, this whole foundation?
Probably the best thing, Darren, is straight to the website, the Blue Wren or BlueWrenFoundation.com.
Gotcha.
And if they go onto the page, they can read about it, watch the videos. There's quite a number of videos.
Beautiful.
The events page tells you all about that leadership program in September. There's a link there. There is no cost for that. We're going for fully funding for that.
Nice.
We're just asking for a donation from the men. So there's some exchange. I believe in exchange. So the men can come. The organisation can make donation. They can do it personally.
Yep.
And it's on the Gold Coast, 11th and 12th of September.
Nice.
September on the Gold Coast is beautiful.
Would be.
People can fly in, and we've got a beautiful venue overlooking the ocean right there in Broadbeach. Really lovely.
Fantastic. Well done.
So it's all go.
Thank you so much. I'll make sure that I put all the links to the Blue Wren Foundation website as well as the leadership program in the show notes. So
Wonderful.
Everybody can access that really easily. And I think it's, it's a sensational organization, and you can see how passionate Adrian is about it. And
Even got the t-shirt.
he's even wearing his totem. But Adrian, thanks again for coming on and sharing such an incredible, incredible idea and incredible foundation. Really appreciate it. And I always like to ask my guest when we finish the podcast, anything that you'd like to leave the audience with, that might help them in their daily life or make them a little better.
Yeah.
Or particularly in line with men in this particular.
I think really explore and own that line in the sand.
Yep.
Really have a think about it. From this conversation that you and I have, maybe there's something that's gone on where you go, you know what? My driving isn't up to par. I do my yell or my scream or whatever, or I'm the silent type. And if you can just start on one little thing, like make the choice to change one thing today, not tomorrow, just one small attitudinal or behavior change, that'll be my message. And if we all do that, what an amazing thing we can produce together.
Absolutely. Love it. Absolutely love it. Well, Adrian, thanks again. I really appreciate that. It was a sensational discussion and a great organization, and I wish you the absolute best of luck. And I know that everybody's going to get behind it and check out the links and join the programs as well.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks for the opportunity to share.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks again, man. And everybody out there, I hope you really enjoyed that as much as I did. And we'll see you very, very soon for another show. Have a great long weekend if you're in Sydney, and a great weekend if you're everywhere else. Bye for now.
Thanks.